I stood in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by 100 faces I'd known my whole life, and felt the weight of their stares like stones. The chandelier above threw fractured light across the polished floor. My father's hand rested on my shoulder, not in comfort, but in warning. My mother stood beside Vivian, my younger sister, whose eyes were red and wet with tears that had been summoned on command. "Elena." My father's voice carried across the silence. "Apologize to your sister." I looked at Vivian, at the diamond bracelet on her wrist, the one I'd saved for 3 months to buy for our mother's birthday, the one Vivian had taken from my room that morning and claimed as her own gift, the one she'd just accused me of stealing from her. But I didn't. "Enough." My mother's voice was sharp. "We found it in your drawer, Elena. Your sister is devastated. The guests are waiting." I felt something crack inside my chest. Not break, crack, like ice before it shatters completely. Around us, the charity gala continued in frozen suspension. Board members, family friends, business partners, all watching the Sterling family's firstborn daughter face public humiliation. I opened my mouth. The words tasted like metal. "I'm sorry, Vivian. I shouldn't have taken what wasn't mine." The lie left my tongue like poison. Vivian's tears stopped instantly, just for a second, and I saw the flash of triumph in her eyes before she threw herself into our mother's arms. "I forgive you," she whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're still my sister." The applause that followed was polite, measured, the kind reserved for uncomfortable moments that needed to pass quickly. My father released my shoulder. My mother guided Vivian away. I stood alone in the center of the room as conversations resumed around me, as if I'd already been erased. I walked to the balcony. The winter air cut through my evening gown, but I welcomed the cold. It matched the numbness spreading through my body. Behind me, I heard my mother's voice. "Elena has always been difficult, jealous. It's been worse since Vivian started at the company." I'd worked at Sterling Industries for 6 years. Vivian had joined 3 months ago. I'd rebuilt the entire marketing division. Vivian had designed a logo. I'd secured the Northridge contract that saved us from bankruptcy. Vivian had smiled at the right people during lunch. But Vivian was 23, soft-spoken, and cried beautifully. I was 28, direct, and asked too many questions. I looked down at the city below. 17 floors. It would be quick. The thought surprised me with its clarity. I didn't want to die. I wanted to stop existing in a world where the truth didn't matter, where my voice meant nothing, where I was always wrong simply because I was me. I heard footsteps behind me. "Elena." David, my fiancé of 2 years, the man I'd introduced to my family, the man who'd promised me partnership and understanding. "You should have just apologized quietly," he said. "Did you have to make it so dramatic?" I turned to face him. "I didn't take the bracelet. It was found in your room." She put it there. He sighed, the kind of sigh that said he was tired of this, of me. "Your sister wouldn't do that." "How do you know?" "Because Vivian isn't vindictive. She's sweet. He stopped himself. I finished for him. "She's everything I'm not." He didn't deny it. "I think we should postpone the wedding," he said, "until you work through whatever this is." I looked at his face, really looked, at the man I'd believed loved me, at the stranger wearing his skin. "There won't be a wedding," I said. "Don't be dramatic, Elena. You always—" "I'm not being dramatic. I'm being clear. We're done." His expression shifted from exasperation to anger. "You're making a mistake." "I've made a lot of those. This isn't one of them." He left. I heard him say something to my mother inside, heard her apologetic tone, heard Vivian's soft voice offering comfort. I stayed on the balcony. The cold had stopped bothering me. I felt nothing at all. The gala ended. The guests left. My family went home without looking for me. I drove myself back to my apartment. The streets were empty. The city looked like a postcard, distant and unreal. I unlocked my door, put my keys on the table, poured a glass of water I didn't drink. I sat on my couch and felt the weight of every moment from the past 10 years. Every time I'd been told I was too much, too aggressive, too difficult. Every time Vivian had smiled and received praise for breathing. Every time I'd explained myself and been told I was making excuses. Every time I'd told the truth and been called a liar. I was so tired. I lay down, closed my eyes, and let the darkness come. It felt like mercy. I woke to sunlight on my face and the sound of birds outside my window. My bedroom, not the afterlife, not a hospital. I sat up slowly. My body felt light, rested. My mind was clear in a way it hadn't been in years. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. The date made me freeze. 5 years earlier. I stared at the screen, checked it again, looked at the calendar on my wall. Same date. I was 23 years old. Vivian was 18. I hadn't met David yet. I was 3 years into working at Sterling Industries. And I remembered everything. Every moment of the next 5 years. Every betrayal, every choice that had led me to that balcony. I should have felt panic, confusion. Instead, I felt calm, crystal, perfect calm. I had been given something impossible, a second chance, not to change them, to change myself. I stood up and looked at my reflection in the mirror. Younger face, same eyes, but something different in them now, something settled and cold and absolutely certain. I would not explain myself this time. I would not defend. I would not beg to be believed. I would simply act and let them discover the consequences of their choices when it was far too late. The first test came at breakfast. I walked into the dining room where my family gathered every Sunday morning. My mother looked up from her newspaper. My father nodded briefly. Vivian smiled at me with that sweet, practiced expression. "Elena, darling," my mother folded the paper. "Your father and I have been discussing your role at the company." Here it was, the conversation where they'd asked me to train Vivian, to mentor her, to hand over my projects so she could learn. In my first life, I'd agreed. I'd been proud that they trusted me. I'd spent months teaching Vivian everything I knew, only to watch her take credit for my work during board meetings while I stood silent in the background. "Vivian will be joining us next month," my father said. "She'll need guidance." I cut my omelette, took a bite, swallowed. "I'm sure she'll find her way," I said. "I'm quite busy with the Northridge proposal." My mother's eyebrows rose slightly. "We thought you could include her in that project, show her how things work." The Northridge proposal requires 5 years of industry experience and knowledge of international contract law. Vivian has neither. It would be irresponsible to include her. The silence that followed was sharp. "Elena," my father said slowly, "this is about family. This is about a $12 million contract. Family doesn't change the requirements." I finished my breakfast while they stared. Then I stood, thanked them for the meal, and left. Behind me, I heard my mother's shocked whisper, "She's never spoken to us like that before." I smiled as I walked to my car. No, I hadn't, because I'd been too busy trying to earn approval that would never come. At the office Monday morning, I went directly to my father's secretary. "I need to schedule a meeting with the board," I said, "regarding the Northridge contract." She blinked at me. "Your father usually handles board presentations." "Not this one. I've been leading the Northridge negotiation for 8 months. I'll present the final proposal." "I'll have to ask." "You'll schedule it for Friday, 10 a.m. Thank you." I walked away before she could respond. In my first life, I'd let my father present my work. He'd done well. Vivian had stood beside him, smiling at the board members, and somehow people remembered her involvement more than mine. This time, they would know exactly who secured Northridge, and they would never forget. Vivian joined the company 3 weeks later. She appeared in my office doorway with coffee and that soft, hopeful smile. "Elena, Mom said you might have some projects I could help with." I looked up from my computer, studied her. This younger version of my sister who hadn't yet learned to weaponize her sweetness. Or maybe she had, and I'd simply been too blind to see it. "I don't," I said. "Oh." Her smile faltered, but I thought, "You thought I'd hand you work that took me years to build expertise for. I won't. If you want to learn, take the training courses, read the industry literature, do what everyone else does. I just wanted to spend time with you, to learn from you." I returned to my screen. "I'm busy, Vivian." She stood there for another moment, then left without another word. That evening my mother called. "Elena, what is wrong with you?" I put her on speaker while I reviewed contracts. "Nothing's wrong." "You were cruel to your sister today. She came home in tears. I told her to take the training courses. You refused to help her. I declined to do her work for her. There's a difference. She looks up to you, Elena. Mother, I have a meeting in 5 minutes. Was there something else?" The pause was long. "You've changed." "Yes," I said. "I have." I ended the call. The Northridge presentation went perfectly. I stood before the board in the conference room and walked them through 8 months of negotiation, contract revision, and strategic planning. I showed them the numbers, the projections, the risk assessments. My father sat in the back, his expression unreadable. The board members leaned forward, asked questions, nodded at my answers. When I finished, the room was silent for 3 seconds. Then the chairman spoke. "This is exceptional work, Elena. Truly exceptional." "Thank you. I think I speak for the entire board when I say we're fortunate to have you leading this." My father shifted in his seat. He'd expected to present, to take the implicit credit, to have the board praise his leadership. Instead, they saw exactly who had earned it. After the meeting, he found me in my office. "That was quite a performance," he said. I saved my document. "It wasn't a performance, it was my work. You undermined me." I looked at him directly. "I presented accurate information about a project I managed. If that felt like undermining, perhaps you should examine why." His jaw tightened. "You're being insubordinate. I'm being competent. If you can't tell the difference, that's your problem, not mine." He left without another word. I returned to my work. That evening, I received an email from the chairman. The board wanted to create a new position, Vice President of Strategic Development, and they wanted me to fill it. In my first life, that position had gone to someone else, someone older, someone male, someone who'd done a fraction of the work I had. I accepted immediately. Vivian's resentment grew slowly. She'd expected me to be her champion, her guide. Instead, I was polite, professional, and completely unavailable. She tried several times to insert herself into my projects. I redirected her every time. She complained to our parents. They called me cold, selfish, unfeeling toward family. I listened, said nothing, and continued working. 6 months passed. My promotion was announced. Vivian had accomplished nothing beyond basic administrative tasks because I'd refused to hand her anything substantial, and no one else at the company was willing to give preferential treatment to the boss's younger daughter. She grew frustrated, then angry, then desperate. The first attack came during a family dinner. "I don't understand why Elena gets everything," Vivian said suddenly, her voice trembling. I work just as hard. My mother reached for her hand. Of course you do, darling. Then why does she get promoted and I'm still doing filing? I took a sip of water. Said nothing. Elena? My father's voice was pointed. Your sister asked you a question. No, she didn't. She made a statement. A false one. False? Vivian's eyes filled with tears. You think I don't work hard? I think you expect rewards for showing up. That's not the same thing as working hard. That's cruel, my mother said sharply. Apologize. I looked at her, at the reflexive defense of Vivian, at the assumption that I was wrong simply because Vivian was crying. No, I said calmly. I won't. The silence was absolute. Elena, my father said slowly, apologize to your sister. I've spent 6 months watching Vivian expect success without effort. I won't apologize for stating facts. You're jealous, Vivian said, her voice breaking. You've always been jealous that people like me better. I stood up, placed my napkin on the table. I'm not jealous, Vivian. I'm done participating in this pattern where your feelings matter more than reality. Enjoy your dinner. I left. Behind me, I heard my mother's shocked voice, my father's anger, Vivian's theatrical sobbing. I drove home and felt nothing but peace. The second attack was more calculated. 3 months later, I discovered that Vivian had been telling colleagues I'd been taking credit for her ideas, that she'd done substantial work on projects I'd refused to acknowledge her contributions to. The rumours were subtle, quiet, designed to poison perception without direct confrontation. In my first life, I'd defended myself frantically. I'd tried to prove the truth. I'd exhausted myself explaining, providing evidence, asking others to verify my claims. It had made me look guilty, desperate, defensive. This time, I did nothing. When a colleague mentioned hearing that I'd failed to credit Vivian, I simply said, "That's interesting," and changed the subject. When someone asked if Vivian had helped with the Morrison account, I said, "Every project has documentation. You're welcome to review it." When my father called me into his office to discuss concerns about your treatment of your sister, I said, "I've never worked with Vivian on any project. My records are complete and available for audit." I didn't defend. I didn't explain. I simply stated facts and moved on. The rumours died within weeks, because without my emotional reaction, they had nothing to feed on. And when people actually reviewed project documentation, which several board members quietly did, they found Vivian's name nowhere. The truth, I learned, didn't need defence. It needed patience. I met David at a corporate mixer a year later. I recognised him immediately. The same sharp suit, the same confident smile, the same charm that had once made me believe I'd found someone who truly saw me. He approached me with champagne and practiced ease. "Elena Sterling," he said, "I've heard impressive things about your work." I took the champagne, didn't drink it. "Have you?" "The Northridge contract, the Morrison account, the board speaks very highly of you." "They should. I earned it," he laughed. "Confidence. I like that." I studied him. This man who would eventually tell me to apologise quietly, who would believe Vivian over me without question, who would suggest postponing our wedding because I was too difficult. "You're David Lawrence," I said. "You work in corporate acquisition." "Guilty, and you're even more beautiful than your reputation suggested." In my first life, I'd blushed at that. I'd felt seen, special, finally valued by someone outside my family. Now I saw exactly what he was doing. Flattery, strategic charm, an approach designed to make me feel grateful for his attention. "My reputation is about my work," I said, "not my appearance." His smile didn't waver. "Of course, I didn't mean—" "You did, but I'll let you try again. What did you actually want to talk about?" He was good. He adjusted smoothly, started discussing the Northridge contract, asking intelligent questions, showing genuine interest in the strategy. We talked for 20 minutes. He was smart, well-informed, and perfectly charming. And I felt absolutely nothing. When he asked for my number, I gave him my business card. "For professional inquiries only," I said. "Only professional?" His smile was practiced. "I was hoping for dinner." "I don't mix business with personal relationships. Enjoy the rest of the event." I walked away. Behind me, I heard him laugh, a sound that carried surprise and something else. Challenge, maybe? Or intrigue. It didn't matter. I'd already dismissed him. 2 years passed in careful construction. I built alliances with key board members. I secured 3 major contracts. I expanded my division's revenue by 40%. Vivian remained in entry-level positions, frustrated by her inability to advance without the boost I'd provided in my first life. She complained frequently to our parents. They, in turn, complained to me. I listened to their grievances with the same detached politeness I gave to weather reports. Information received, action declined. My parents grew increasingly disappointed in me. I was successful, yes, but cold, distant, unwilling to help family. I accepted their disappointment like weather, uncontrollable and ultimately irrelevant. David pursued me periodically. Dinner, invitations, coffee, suggestions, strategic encounters at industry events. I remained polite and unavailable. He was persistent. I was consistent. Eventually, he shifted his attention to someone more receptive. I watched him start dating Vivian and felt nothing but mild interest. This had happened in my first life too. After our breakup, he turned to my sister. She'd been sympathetic, understanding. Everything I supposedly wasn't. They'd gotten engaged 6 months after I died. I'd learned about it from the engagement announcement my mother had been planning the night of the gala. Now I watched it unfold with detachment. 2 people who valued appearance over substance, finding each other perfectly suited. At a family dinner where they announced their relationship, my mother watched me carefully for any sign of jealousy or hurt. I congratulated them sincerely, wished them happiness, and meant neither word. "You're not upset?" Vivian asked, her voice carrying a note of disappointment. "Why would I be?" "Because David and you dated for a while." "We had coffee twice. I declined further meetings. He was free to pursue other interests." "She's lying," Vivian said to David, her voice soft but pointed. They were serious. "She's just too proud to admit she's hurt." David looked at me. I looked back with complete neutrality. "I'm not hurt, Vivian. I'm indifferent. There's a difference." My mother frowned. "Elena, you don't have to pretend." "I'm not pretending. I declined David's interest 2 years ago. What he does now is none of my concern." I returned to my meal. Around me, my family exchanged glances. They'd wanted drama, tears, some sign that I cared. I gave them nothing. The parallel moment came 3 years after my rebirth. My mother's birthday gala. The same charity event. The same ballroom with its fractured chandelier lights. I arrived in a different dress this time. Deep blue instead of silver. Simple instead of elaborate. Vivian was there with David. They'd been dating for 8 months. She wore the diamond bracelet, the one I'd bought with 3 months' savings in my first life. This time, I'd bought my mother pearl earrings. Thoughtful, expensive, uniquely selected. Vivian's gift had been a designer scarf. Generic. Last minute. Expensive enough to seem meaningful. During the gift presentation, my mother had smiled at both items, thanked us equally, but I'd seen her fingers return to the pearl earrings 3 times throughout the evening. Midway through the gala, I stepped outside to the balcony. Same position, same winter air, but this time I felt no despair, only quiet observation. Behind me, I heard voices. "Elena's changed so much." My mother's voice. "She's so distant now." She's always been difficult. Vivian, I try to connect with her, but she pushes me away. It's sad, David added. She could be so much more if she'd just let people help her. She doesn't seem to want help, my mother said. She doesn't seem to want anything from us at all. Because she thinks she's better than everyone, Vivian said, her voice sharp with frustration. She always has. That's not true, a different voice said. The chairman of the board. She's the most capable executive we have. My mother looked surprised. Oh, I didn't realize you were there. I've been watching your daughters for 3 years. Elena built our strategic development division from nothing. What has Vivian accomplished? The silence was sharp and uncomfortable. Vivian is still learning, my mother said carefully. With respect, Mrs. Sterling, she's had the same learning period Elena had. The results speak for themselves. He nodded politely and walked away. I watched my mother's expression shift, watched David's smile become strained, watched Vivian's face flush with humiliation. I stepped out of the shadows. Good evening, I said calmly. Enjoying the party? They stared at me, uncertain how much I'd heard, too proud to ask. Elena, my mother said finally, we were just discussing my shortcomings. I know, you do that often. I walked past them, back into the ballroom. Behind me, I heard Vivian's voice rise in indignation, heard David's soothing tone, heard my mother's confused attempts to understand what had just happened. I found my father near the bar. The board is offering me executive vice president, I said. I'm accepting. He turned to me, his expression complicated. That's remarkable, Elena. Yes, it is. I'm proud of you. The words came too late, 3 years too late, 5 years too late if I counted my first life. Thank you, I said, because there was nothing else to say to praise that meant nothing anymore. The weeks following my promotion brought a shift in the family dynamic. My parents began inviting me to dinners more frequently, not out of genuine interest, I understood, but because my success reflected well on them. The Sterling name carried more weight now that I was in executive leadership. I attended these dinners with the same professional courtesy I gave to business meetings, present but not invested, polite but not warm. Vivian's frustration became more visible. At one dinner, she announced her engagement to David with obvious excitement. We're thinking June, she said, her eyes bright. And, Eleanor, I'd love for you to be my maid of honour. The request was strategic, a public gesture that would make me look petty if I refused. I'll have to check my schedule, I said. June is our busiest quarter for international negotiations. Surely you can take one day off for family, my mother said. I can attend the wedding. I cannot commit to the additional obligations of being in the wedding party. It's just a few dress fittings and the rehearsal dinner, Vivian pressed. It would mean so much to me. Then I'm sure you have other friends who would be honoured by the role. Her smile faltered. But you're my sister. Yes, and I'll be there as a guest. That's what I can offer. My father cleared his throat. Elena, your sister is asking for something small. She's asking me to participate in a performance. I'm declining. My answer is final. The dinner continued in uncomfortable silence. Later, my mother cornered me in the hallway. When did you become so selfish? She asked. I'm not selfish. I'm honest about my limitations. You have no limitations. You simply don't care about anyone but yourself. I looked at her, really looked, at this woman who'd spent 30 years telling me to be smaller, quieter, more like Vivian. I care about people who've shown they care about me, I said. You and Vivian aren't in that category. That's a terrible thing to say. It's a true thing to say. You've spent 3 years being disappointed that I stopped letting you control me. That's your problem to solve, not mine. I left before she could respond. The final piece fell into place 6 months later. Vivian appeared in my office. No coffee this time. No soft smile. Just anger. "You've been sabotaging me," she said. I looked up from my computer. "I haven't thought about you enough to sabotage anything. You refused to help me. You turned people against me. You made sure I'd fail. I did my work. You did yours. The results speak for themselves. That's not fair. You had advantages. Dad gave you better projects. Dad gave me nothing. I earned every project by delivering results on the previous one. You could have done the same." Her face flushed. "Mom and Dad always liked you better." I almost laughed. "Is that what you tell yourself?" "You were always the favourite, the smart one, the successful one. And yet, you're the one they defended, protected, excused. Every single time you failed, they blamed me for not helping you. Every time I succeeded, they minimised it to make you feel better." "That's not true." "It's completely true, but it doesn't matter anymore." She stared at me. "What happened to you, Elena? You used to be kind." "I used to be convenient." "You're confusing the two." "David says you've changed, that you're not the person you used to be." "David never knew the person I was. Neither did you, neither did our parents. You all preferred the version of me that made your lives easier." "That's not Vivian." My voice was quiet, final. "I'm done with this conversation. I'm done pretending your feelings are more important than reality. I'm done being blamed for your choices. If you want to succeed, work. If you want to fail, keep expecting other people to carry you. I don't care which you choose." She left. I heard her crying in the hallway outside my office. I felt nothing. The gala from my first life replayed itself with eerie precision, exactly 5 years after my rebirth. Same charity event, same ballroom, same chandelier. But this time, I was the guest of honour, the keynote speaker, the executive being celebrated for transforming the company's international division. My parents sat at the family table, Vivian beside them holding David's hand. She'd gotten engaged 3 months earlier. The wedding was planned for June, just as she'd announced at that dinner. I stood at the podium and spoke about strategic development, about risk assessment, about the courage to make difficult decisions. The applause was genuine, sustained. I saw the chairman stand first, then others follow. After my speech, I returned to my table. Not the family table, my own table, surrounded by colleagues and board members who valued my work. My mother approached during dessert. "Elena," she said quietly, "that was a wonderful speech." "Thank you." "Your father and we'd like to talk to you about family, about how you've treated me for 30 years. She flinched. "That's not fair." "It's perfectly fair. You've spent 3 decades telling me I was wrong, difficult, and cruel. You defended Vivian's mediocrity and punished my excellence. You demanded I explain myself while never questioning her. You chose her feelings over my reality every single time. We loved you both equally. You loved the idea of us equally. You loved Vivian as she was, and me only when I made you comfortable." "Elena, please." "I'm not angry, Mother. I'm simply done. You made your choice. I've made mine." I stood, thanked my table companions, and left the gala early. Not to a balcony, to my car, to my home, to the life I'd built completely on my own terms. 2 months later, the pattern completed itself. Vivian's engagement to David fell apart. I learned about it from office gossip. She discovered text messages between him and a colleague. The same pattern of charm and strategic interest he'd used on both of us. She'd been devastated, publicly. The family had rallied around her. My mother called to tell me, perhaps expecting sympathy, understanding, sisterly support. "That's unfortunate," I said. "That's all you have to say? Your sister is heartbroken." She's heartbroken over a man who was never worth her time. The same man I dismissed years ago. Perhaps she should have paid attention. Elena, she needs you. She needed me to be wrong, to be difficult, to be the problem so she could be the solution. Now she has exactly what she built. You can't mean that. I mean every word. Vivian made her choices. She pursued a man she knew was shallow because he made her feel special. She ignored every sign because she wanted the fairy tale. Those were her decisions, not mine. When did you become so cruel? I became realistic. You're confusing the two because you've never had to face reality. Vivian hasn't either. Maybe this will teach her something. My mother's voice was cold. I don't know you anymore. You never did. Goodbye, Mother. I ended the call. 3 months after that, the company threw a celebration for securing the largest international contract in its history. My project, my team, my leadership. I stood in the same ballroom where I'd been humiliated 5 years earlier, where I died inside before dying, for real. My family attended. They sat in the back. I'd invited them out of formality, not sentiment. During the reception, my father approached me. Elena, he said, I owe you an apology. I took a sip of champagne. Do you? I didn't understand what you were building, what you were capable of. You thought I needed to be more like Vivian, softer, more agreeable, more willing to let others take credit. Yes. And now? Now I see I was wrong. You were right to refuse, to build your own path, to stop explaining myself to people who'd already decided I was the problem. He nodded slowly. Yes. I looked at him. This man who'd spent 30 years telling me I was too much, too difficult, too unwilling to compromise. I appreciate the apology, I said, but it doesn't change anything. Elena, you taught me that truth doesn't matter, that feelings override reality, that the person willing to cry wins over the person telling facts. Those lessons shaped everything that came after. I want to fix this, to fix us. There's nothing to fix. This is who we are now. You chose Vivian's comfort over my truth for 30 years. I've chosen my peace over your approval. We're even. We're your family. You're people who share my genetics. That's not the same thing. I walked away. Not in anger, not in pain, in simple completion. Behind me, I heard my mother's voice asking what happened. My father's quiet response. I heard Vivian say something about how I'd always been impossible. I didn't turn around. That night, I stood on my apartment balcony. Different building, different view, different woman. The city spread below me in lights and shadows. Somewhere in those streets, Vivian was recovering from her broken engagement. David was charming someone new. My parents were trying to understand where they went wrong. And I was here, whole, clear, free. I thought about the first Elena, the one who'd stood on a different balcony 5 years ago, and felt the weight of everyone's disappointment crushing her into nothing. The one who died believing she was the problem. I understood her now. The exhaustion of constantly explaining yourself to people who'd already decided you were wrong. The desperation of trying to prove your worth to those who'd already assigned you none. The mercy of letting go. But I hadn't let go by falling. I'd let go by standing still, by refusing to chase approval that would never come, by accepting that some people would never believe me and choosing myself anyway. The truth had won, not through confrontation, through consistency. Justice had arrived, not through revenge, through natural consequences, and I had survived, not by fighting, by finally, completely releasing the need to make them understand. I didn't forgive them. Forgiveness required caring enough to absolve. I was past that. I simply released them. Let them exist in their own truth while I existed in mine. The winter air was cold against my face. I breathed it in, felt it sharp and real in my lungs. I was 33 years old. I had rebuilt myself twice, once from birth, once from death. And I had learned, the most important lesson: you cannot make people see you. You can only refuse to disappear. I went inside, closed the balcony door, made tea. Tomorrow there would be another project, another contract, another step in the career I'd built without permission or apology. But tonight there was just this: stillness, balance, the quiet satisfaction of existing exactly as I was, with no explanation needed. I had stopped defending myself, and in that silence, I had found something they could never take away: myself, whole, true, finally free. The story was over, the pattern complete. And I stood alone in my peace, victorious in the only way that mattered, by choosing, at last, to be enough.